Hey, what's up guys? My name is Smokey. You may know me as Inappropriate Reefer. Welcome. First of all, thank you to Richard of Aficionado at Reefs.com for allowing me this chance to introduce my 145-gallon tank as well as my 17-gallon Mangrove tank to you guys. I hope you guys have a great week, so if you're ready, let's get right to it. Alright guys, let's talk about the 135-gallon tank first. The tank itself is a Motor Aquarium 135-gallon Infinity series. The length is 4 foot, the width is 30 inches, and the height is 20 inches. So the tank is actually pretty wide, which is an interesting dimension for reef tank. I like the fact that it kind of allows me the opportunity to play with different depth. Now in terms of equipment up in the display tank, first of all, it is being lit by 3 of the Ecotech XL15 Gen 5 Pros. Fantastic lights. It's being pushed by 2 MP40s, and also the water is being returned through the VCA's random flow generator, which has been doing a great job. You may notice this little contraption right here. I actually has a Eheim auto feeder set up on this tank just so that I know at least the tank is being fed consistently. So it's not counting on me to come down to the basement to feed the fish around the clock. Alright guys, coming down here to the sump area, the first chamber is a crash chamber. And in the first chamber, I'm actually taking water sample for the alkatronic that keeps tab of the alkalinity of this tank. Now, based on the alkalinity reading, it's gonna dose with its little buddy dosetronic, and I'm actually dosing ATI Essential Pro. Going to the second chamber is the filter stock chamber. Currently, I'm using a filter cup with a bag of activated carbon. Now, I'm kind of hesitant whether I'm gonna run the carbon 24/7. Most likely I will, so I may end up using a media reactor. But for now, a bag of carbon in there works. The next chamber over is gonna be the skimmer. So I'm using a Vertex Omega 180i, which has been performing flawlessly. Nothing bad to say about it, really happy about it. After the skimmer chamber, it's gonna flow into the refugium, which is huge for this Motor Aquarium sump. It's like a huge area, and I really like the huge sump because I really want to do something interesting with the refugium. At the moment, I'm experimenting with different red mackerel. That's why you see like dragon breath, and you see like Garcias and stuff like that. I tried different ways of mounting the dragon breath. Currently, I'm testing whether I can grow dragon breath on a bio ball that is tied down to a piece of rock. So we'll see. For heating, I'm using Phoenix titanium heaters, one 500 watts and then one 300 watts, leaning towards titanium because I feel like they don't break as easily as glass, and this came highly recommended from my Reef Sensei Telegram. So thank you, Telegram. Gotta give you a shout out here as well. For water top off, I'm using the XP Aqua Duados. I use that top off, I think like on 2 of my tanks currently, but I had 3 of my tanks on them. Work beautifully as well. Finally, we're going to our return chamber, and here's where I got all these biomedias. I'm trying different types. We got this good old Marine Pure blocks, we got Marine Pure spheres, we got the eShop Spout Lux, and then we got the Ceres ones. And as you can see, I already have some of the pots swimming around, so they're living the life here. You got like a pot hotel, I guess, right here. Over here, we got a couple probes, and these probes are actually from a GHL Mini. I'm currently using a GHL Mini to monitor temperature and the pH. I'm not really doing anything crazy with them yet, but I may start adding some program to it. That remains to be seen. And I also got a couple mangrove pots here, just because I got no other place to put it at the moment, but these will probably not be here long term. And finally, we're gonna use the return pump. That is the Coral Box. I think it's the, actually I'm not sure of the exact model number, but I know this is a Coral Box pump to push water back up to the top. Oh, by the way, we also got a Pixie. I believe this is like 2.0 to Life from Refugium, and this is actually on loan from my Reef Sensei Telegram. All right, with that said, let's go back into the display and take a look at the livestock, shall we? If I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I am way more into livestocks than equipments. I know a lot of people are big fans of tweaking equipments and stuff like that, but not me. I just want to know what is good, what works, and just plug and play. That would be my ideal. DIY is not really my cup of tea. I could possibly do it, usually thanks to a lot of local and online help from other reefers, but if I have it my way, I just want something to just work. With that said though, let's talk about the livestocks. Now fish-wise, I have this pair of Mocha Vinci clowns for I think up to 5.5 years now. This was back in my 45-gallon reef tank days, and they're my babies. And right next to them, like a Velcro fish, is this guy right here. I call him Genie, and this is a baby blue tang I actually just picked up maybe 2 months ago. It's grown tremendously. He was the size of a dime before all this, and look how fast it's grown. And in the back there's a silver belly wrasse that I call Kramer because he would always just kind of pop up randomly like an unannounced neighbor, so we call him Kramer. In terms of other livestock, we also got two cleaner shrimps right here who likes to steal food from corals. We got this big fighting conch right here that I call Samson. And we also got that nice big fat Derisa clams that I actually got from Petco maybe 2.5 years ago, and he was $50 from Petco. I was really lucky, and it happened that the Petco employee there was really knowledgeable as well. So let's talk a little bit about this tank. So this is a really new tank. It is probably 4 months old at this point. If I have it my way, I probably would not have added all these corals until maybe at the 6 months mark. And the reason I have all these things in here is because my predecessor of this tank, the 45-gallon tank, sprung a leak basically, and I was haphazardly patching it up. So I want to remove the corals from that tank and drain it ASAP. And that's why up to like the 3 months mark, 4 months mark, I feel like, okay, the tank is probably ready. That's when I started just unloading all the corals into this tank. I guess one thing I have in my favor is that I do also have all these really mature biomedia that came from the 45-gallon tank. So surprisingly, actually I was really surprised that it did not really go through a big cycle. Obviously I see some diatoms or green algae on the rock and a little bit on the sand bed, but nothing bad. Because in the past, whenever I cycle, I always get tremendous amount of hair algae near the end. Now, full disclosure, I do like to keep my light on during the cycling process. It's just kind of like one of my habits. I like to see when I see like green hair algae showing up, I know that, okay, cycling is pretty much done. But in this case, even when the light is on, or with the light on, I still do not see an outbreak of hair algae. So I really think that the biomedia help a lot in this case. So one interesting thing I tried with this build is actually cementing dry rock. In most of my tanks, I use dry rock because I feel like it just gives me a little bit more time to kind of like do rock placement before having to commit it to water. But on top of that, this time I actually used the Mangrove 400 cements to try to piece different rocks together. And as you can see, I thought it works pretty well. I was actually pretty impressed by how well it works. This rock is supposed to end right there. But as a test, I was like, okay, can I put another piece? I can. Let's try another piece. I can. Okay, so that's how this came to be. Now, one interesting thing that happened recently is that somebody sent me a DM saying that he works at a hospital. He actually showed some of the nurses my Aquascape, and they pointed out that it actually looks kind of, and I was like, what? I did not notice that at all, because before this day, if people compare this to something, it's either going to be a dragon head or it's going to be a tail of a scorpion, right? I kind of see the dragon head. I kind of see the scorpion. I don't see that other thing that they're talking about, but I just thought it was kind of interesting, and it kind of fits because my channel name is Inappropriate Reefer, right? All right, let's take a closer look to the corals before we move on to the next tank, shall we? First of all, we got the Space Invader Pectinia, one of my favorite coral. Back there, we got a little bit of a NPS going on. We got the fathead andros and also the sun coral. At the moment, I'm trying to build a contraption to feed them so the cleaner shrimp will not go in and rip the food out of from their tentacles. Sliding over here, we got a small Zoa garden, which was not small when it was in the 45-gallon tank. But when you put it in the 135, everything just kind of shrank a little bit. They're a little bit upset because like before I have the 3 XL15 installed, I have a little light all the way in the back of the tank that does not reach up to the front. So they're slowly recovering and regaining the color. Back there, I got some of the letters. And sliding over here, we got a couple gorgonians that I just added 2 days ago. So they're still acclimating. And of course, in the back, we got frog spawn, which also is recovering because it was not receiving lights, but I feel like they should bounce back. And of course, in front of them, we got the nice clam here, and then over here, we got a nice little mussels that was supposed to be dinner, but I thought, oh, can we keep one in the reef tank? We could. This guy's been alive for about 5 weeks already at this point, so that is really cool. And it's actually really interesting. All the fish actually stick together. Typically, the silver belly wrasse, Kramer, he will only come out in the morning. Right now it's at night, so it's kind of interesting to see him out and about, and even more interesting to see him actually schooling together with the clown and the hippo tang. All right, guys. Oh wait, here, check this out too. I actually got 2 tuxedo urchin. I actually got them from the Reef Palooza in New Jersey, I think last year. Also the size of a dime, tiny little guy, but he has also grown tremendously. All right, future plan of this tank. This is a really young tank. It's about like 4 months mark right now. So I'm gonna stick to easy to keep corals, like soft corals. We're talking about like the leather, the zoas, gorgonians. As this tank mature, I'm gonna start adding some corals that's LPS, for example, like frostbound hammer, acans, etc. And when the tank hits about year and a half mark, I'll start introducing more SPS. Ultimately, I wish that this tank would be acro tank. That's because like it's just not something that I've tried before. I've tried Mandipora, Capcornis, also like bird's nest and stuff like that in my 45-gallon tank with like moderate success. I would like to go a little bit further with this build. So when the tank hit about year and a half, I'm gonna start trying those tougher SPS and we'll see how it goes. All right guys, sorry I rambled on long enough. Let's take a really quick look at the Mangrove tank. All right, I'm so sorry, Richard. I know I'm way over my time limit, but I really want to talk about my Mangrove tank real quick, if you'll allow me. This is a 17-gallon Aquamax aquarium. It's pretty much like a rimless tank, nothing else, which is fantastic. I like the minimalist look. In terms of light, I have 2 lights on this tank. First one is going to be a Radion XL30. This is a Gen 4 Pro. And the second one is going to be a Z-Lite UFO. And the reason I have 2 lights over this tank is that the Radion is handling all the lighting requirements for the corals as well as the macro algae, and the Z-Lite UFO is handling the lighting for the red mangrove tank. And the reason I went with a separate light for the mangrove is number 1, the mangrove is obviously a lot taller than the corals. And number 2, in the past I've always tried to put mangrove as a secondary thought as to the actual coral reef, meaning that I may shove the mangrove in the sump, refugium, or in the back chamber, and it had never really done well for me. So this time I want to give them a fair shot. That's why I gave them their own lights, and as a result, it has been growing fantastically. It's putting out like new tiers of leaves, I think every month and a half, 2 months. So I've been really happy with the results. Coming down a little bit, in terms of livestock, one side I have all the corals, on the other side I have mangrove as well as the macroalgae, and this tank is really going to be catered towards the red mangrove as well as the macroalgae. And you can see here I'm starting to stock up on different macro. I want to see which one does well, and then I'm going to focus on that species and maybe 1 or 2 contrasting morph, and we'll go from there. In terms of corals, we got standard frog spawn, we got leathers, we got some mushroom, all the easier to keep corals, because this tank is going to be higher nutrient. And also we have a rock full of Christmas tree worms, which is really cool and a little bit more rare these days, but it is slowly being taken over by the rostas. In terms of macroalgae, honestly, I don't really know the name. I just know like feather mackerel, prolific mackerel. This starts with a B, but I can't pronounce it, so that's all I got. But this tank is going to be a macroalgae, and hopefully I can brush up on my macroalgae terms and terminology as well as care as we go along. In terms of the other parts of the life support for this tank, we have a MP10 providing all the circulation for this tank right here. We got the XP Aqua Duados again in terms of auto top off. And for dosing, I'm actually dosing 3 milliliter of Reef once a day using the Coral Box single channel doser. The little containers back there as well. The other really funky thing that I'm doing with this tank is actually using a air stone, and air stone would turn on 4 times a day for about 15 minutes each time. And the purpose I did that is because if you look right here, I have some water surface film on this tank, and I was thinking that it may be impeding the fish ability to get oxygen. That's why I want to run some air stone to break things apart. However, one thing I'm just learning these days is that I may inevitably be micro bubble scrubbing the tank. And by doing so, the dirty stuff or the protein and whatnot may be kind of attached to the bubble eraser surface, and that may actually cause a spiraling effect for the film up here. So down the line, I'm probably going to step up in terms of water change, which I'm currently doing every 2 or 3 weeks. I may do that, or I may find some way to skim the water surface to get rid of this oil film. So we'll see. This is a constant work in progress, and I love that. And I feel like the tank is finally kind of like getting into stride, whether it's this tank or the 145-gallon tank. They both went through the ugly phase of cycling, and they're both coming out of cycle and looking pretty nice, if I can say so myself. And I feel like they both have their own distinct personality. One last thing I want to talk about this tank are the fish. So these are the blueback blue eyes dwarf rainbow fish from Australia. They are typically brackish, But the breeder I found them, he had been keeping them in his frag tank as well, and they've been really interesting to look at. Initially, I was a little bit nervous because they all kind of tend to stick to the surface of the water, and that's why I added the air stone actually, thinking that maybe there's not enough oxygen in the water. But later on, I realized that they actually surface dweller. They like to stay near the surface. But in the early morning and late afternoon, they'll actually sink down and kind of like play around in the middle of the water column. So them staying up there is just part of their natural habitat. They just prefer to do that. And that's a really, really quick view of this mangrove tank. Alright guys, hope you guys enjoyed the little quick tour of the 135 and the 17-gallon tanks. Once again, thank you Richard of Aficionado, and also you guys for watching this. Hope you guys have a good week, and I'll see you guys in the future.